Welcome to The Reconnect with Carmen LaBerge. We're applying the mind of Christ to the matters of the day so that you can connect the eternal with the everyday and get ready to head out into the world that God so loves in ways that honor Jesus. So let's get started. This is The Reconnect.
Inspiring you to bring God back into the conversation of the day.
This is The Reconnect with Carmen LaBerge on Faith Radio.
If we're gonna fly, we fly like eagles, arms out wide. If we're gonna fear, we fear no evil. We will rise. By your power, we will go. By your spirit, we are bold. If we're gonna stand, we stand as giants. If we're gonna walk, we walk as lions.
Hello, my friends. It's hour 2 of The Reconnect. I'm Carmen LaBerge. If you missed hour 1, it will pretty soon be posted as a podcast. And if you're not already subscribed to The Reconnect as a podcast, I invite you to do that wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're like, well, I don't already get my podcasts anywhere, you can just go to myfaithradio.com. You can, podcasts are not hard to find. You can find us on YouTube. On and on and on. So just look for The Reconnect with Carmen. We're out there. Let's see. Let's do some headlines here at the top of this hour. Bring the mind of Christ to bear on some stuff that's going on in the culture. The United States has finally released the agreement with Iran. It is just 14 points. I don't think there's really much there for us to plumb the depths of. There is tons of commentary in the culture about, what's in the deal, what's not in the deal, if it's a good deal, who it's a good deal for. Here's the deal. It's not really quite a deal yet. It's the framework of a deal. And there are those who you are going to hear talk about it from a range of perspectives. And so, this would be one of those where I would encourage us maybe to reserve judgment. The cost of oil is plummeting. And so that's good news for the economy. It's good news for people around the world. It's good news for you and me. And also, anytime that there's a cessation of active warfare, that's good news as well. And so let us be people who are hopeful and diligent and encouraging of the process moving forward. How's that sound? Tropical storm Arthur has fully formed off the Texas coast. It's fueling a major flood threat for Gulf Coast states in the southern U.S. But other folks across the country are dealing with all kinds of other severe weather in the aftermath of storms. And so if you've got storm damage or you live in a community where, your neighbors might need some help, today's a great day. This is a great weekend to spend some time sort of being neighborly. I'm going to encourage you to do that as well. You will know the name of Luigi Mangione. He is the person who traveled to the state of New York with the purpose of killing United Healthcare Chief Executive Brian Thompson. There's no question that he committed the crime, and so he is going on trial, and his attorneys will present a, quote, psychiatric defense that he was suffering an extreme emotional disturbance at the time that he committed the murder. Let me just say this. Anybody that commits murder is experiencing some kind of extreme emotional distress. I'm not sure that that is a defense. Or if it's allowed to be in a defense, then anybody is going to be able to use it because you're not in your right mind if you're taking the life of another person. I'm not sure that that is a legitimate defense, but that is the defense that is being proposed. So those are some of the top headlines of the day. But the truth is, whatever is top of mind for you is probably what's going to drive your conversations today, or at least the ones you'd be most interested in having. And so let me encourage you as you enter into interactions with others today. Like, just ask them, hey, what's top of mind right now? What's on your heart? What's on your mind? And let the conversation start there. We don't always have to be the people that bring the subject matter of discussion. we can ask. We can listen before we talk. Hey, what's top of mind for you? There's a ton of stuff going on in the headlines, but whatever's going on in your life right now, that's really what's most pressing upon your heart and mind. So what's going on with you? What's top of mind? There's a story out of Minnesota that I will confess to you. I mean, since I heard it a couple of days ago, I have not been able to get it out of my mind. Two hikers, Adam and Mike, they're just doing what they're doing, and they see something. This is a little bit like, it's not. I don't want to overplay the, hey, when you're out there doing what you're doing and you see something that's a little bit off, stop and take a closer look, like Moses in the burning bush. I don't want to go quite that far, but I do want to say that's kind of what happened. Like, they saw a vehicle that was clearly out of place. They're riding these all-terrain vehicles, and they see this vehicle that's just clearly out of place. They see a van that's not an off-road vehicle at all, and it is in a place that it shouldn't be. And so they stopped and took a longer look. And that's when they heard something, like a little whisper, like a little voice. Help me. And so they looked closer. And that's when they saw a pair of lips. That's all that was visible, just part of a face poking out of a puddle of mud. And when I say puddle, it's a pretty good puddle of mud. Over the course of 3 days, this 68-year-old woman who had gotten stuck in the mud and then stepped out of her vehicle into the mud, and then over the course of 3 days, the entirety of her body sank into the mud. All that was left above the surface was just a small circle around her mouth. Help me. Those two men dug her out and saved her life. She'd been in the mud for 3 days. I haven't been able to get the story out of my mind. And I just want to make some observations. First of all, thank God. Thank God for these two guys who saw something odd, turned aside from what they were doing, took a longer look, listened carefully, and then leapt into action. Had it not been for them, that's a divine appointment right there. Nobody could orchestrate such an intersection in the middle of literal nowhere. And then I have this observation about Catherine. We don't yet have her full story. She's obviously grateful. She's expected to make a full recovery. But at some point, I suspect, she asked for some divine intervention. Help has to come from the outside. There's some stuff we get ourselves stuck into, that we sink into, the sinking sand all around us, that help's got to come from the outside. And that's what God does in Jesus Christ. We got ourselves so stuck in sin, we were sinking all the way up to our noses. But literally, if you cry out for help, Christ has come to save the day. Christ has come to save your life. Christ has come to set you upon a solid rock for you to build a life that will withstand the storms that are coming. On Christ, the solid rock, I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. That's the other thing that came to mind as I heard Catherine's story. What's top of mind for you today? How are you going to go out there into the world that God so loves and be an agent of his grace, an ambassador of his kingdom, a minister of his reconciling love? That's who you are. Our friend Mike Novotny is going to join us next. He's a broadcaster here on the Faith Radio Network. His show is Time of Grace. He's also got a new book called Newlywed, a Christian guide for loving year one. That's up next here on The Reconnect. Our friend, Pastor Mike Novotny, is joining us. You can find him at timeofgrace.org, also the host of Time of Grace here on the Faith Radio Network. Mike, welcome back to The Reconnect.
Hey, Carmen, thanks for having me back.
Let's talk about marriage. This is like wedding season, I think. It's a lot. I mean, now it's like FIFA season, but it's wedding season. We're kind of past graduation season. And so we want to talk about marriage. Most people spend most of their time planning the wedding, preparing for a walk down the aisle instead of all that comes after that. Talk with us about like what's at stake in the gap between all the time spent planning the wedding but not preparing for marriage.
Yeah, it's everything. No one 6 months into their marriage says, but the centerpieces on our wedding day were amazing. Instead, they're thinking about really practical things like communication and intimacy. They're thinking about balancing time with in-laws and time with each other. They're making budgets. They're
If
thinking
we're
about
super
faith.
duper, if we're super duper honest, like we're like, I'm older, my body has changed. We need to have conversations about what that means for our sex life. Like these are not premarital conversations, but they
Yeah.
need to be. Like we change
sure.
over time. That's a huge part of it.
You're exactly right. I actually had the chance to interview 20 newlyweds at our church. So people that had been married, I think for 2 years or less. And what I found out in talking to them was that they had spent so much time thinking about the dress and the flowers and the songs and the reception and the menu and the budget for that one day that they hadn't really gone deep on some of these bigger conversations. And kind of as I scratched beneath the surface, some of them talked about like their relationship with their in-laws. For others, it was money. For others, it was sex. But the big theme that kept rising to the surface was mutually agreed upon expectations. That he had expectations about what intimacy would be like. She had expectations of what he would do when he came home from work. They both had expectations of what was like good and bad behavior with their phones. But in a lot of cases, they hadn't expressed those expectations, worked through it together, and came to this, what I think is a massive part of a healthy marriage, is a long list of mutually agreed upon expectations.
Yeah, that is really good. And so if you want a link now that we have whetted your appetite and you're like, oh, I need that. You may be in year one of your marriage. Maybe you are just preparing for marriage. Maybe you are in a position to pass this resource along to couples who are preparing for marriage. That would be really great. We want to avail you of these resources. We'll send you the direct link on the text line, 877-933-2484. Newlywed, a Christian guide for loving year one. Talk with us a little bit about communication. Communication takes up 5 chapters of the book.
Yeah, it does. I have some friends that had a really rough start to their relationship. There's some of my best friends. She ended up getting pregnant by him at age 16. They were young. They came from pretty difficult family situations. They came to our church. They got saved. They were baptized. And very soon after, I got to do their wedding. And this was right after I'd come up with what I call the 10 commandments of communication. And it's really cool, Carmen. Now, like over a decade later into their marriage, they have a framed copy of the 10 commandments of communication. And they would say it just changed the way they talk to each other. And when they changed the way they talked to each other, it changed the way they loved each other. So obviously we don't have time to run through all 10, but number 1 is my favorite by far. The commandment is, you shall not try to win. Even after 23 years of being married, I've noticed that when Kim and I aren't on the same page, Kim is my wife, that if I enter that conversation thinking the goal is to win, is to persuade, it's to make my case, it's to defend my position, that just doesn't work. In my brain, I have this logical argument, but if I don't come seeking first to understand where she's at, what she's feeling, what she thinks, why she thinks it, if I can't humbly kind of express, what I understand, where she's at and where I'm at in this moment, like if I come in trying to win, I end up doing all these other really terrible communication things. I'm going to interrupt her. I'm going to keep score. I'm going to change the subject. I'm going to raise my voice. I'm going to be defensive. I'm not really going to listen because I'm going to be ready to pounce on some point that I think I'm going to turn into a lawyer instead of a husband. And no disrespect to the lawyers out there, but it's not a court case. There's no judge and jury. There's just husband and wife trying to communicate well. So I love that. If you can keep that commandment, you're going to have great communication and I think a great marriage.
I always appreciate number 10 on that list, and that is like you're having the conversation at the foot of the cross.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
you're doing it in the presence of Christ. You're doing it with humility toward one another. All right, we're talking with Pastor Mike Novotny. Tons of great resources, like the 10 Commandments of Communication in Marriage. You could find those at timeofgrace.org. We're talking today about his new book, Newlywed, a Christian guide for loving year one. We're happy to send you the link on the text line, 877-933-2484. You start the conversation where I think we must, which is, you and me and God. And then we talk about communication. And then we start getting into those issues that I think are not going to surprise anybody, that these are issues that people as singles have thought about, but maybe have not thought about together. And one of those would be money. Money, sex, politics, religion, in-laws, like these are the things that we all need to be talking about. Chores, kids, careers, like the list is long. So how would you encourage people to start a conversation if they know that these are one of the topics that they need to talk about, that they need to work on, but they really don't know how to introduce it because they just feel like it's going to be a flashpoint?
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I really encourage couples to have like a long date night with just one point on the agenda. So let's take money, for example. Hey, we're going to go out for a nice dinner. The goal of this dinner is that I'm going to tell you what I think about money and why I think that way. And I want to understand what you think about money and why you think that way. So we don't have to solve it. We're not going to leave with like a perfect Dave Ramsey budget after the dessert is over. But I just want to understand, like maybe you grew up in a family where money was always tight. And so the reason you hold on tightly to money is because you never felt like you had enough as a kid. There was all the anxiety of, are we going to have enough for groceries? Wow, that's going to make a big difference if we as a couple get a tax refund. And I think, hey, vacation money. And you're thinking, this is my security. Or maybe I just heard of a guy whose father was really financially conservative and we're going to save for the future. And then the father had a heart attack and died before he got to enjoy any of it. And so his kids have that mindset of like, why would I save for 50 years from now when I might be dead in 45 or 15? So it's so we often make decisions about money, like our behaviors that are based on beliefs that started really young for us. And so if I'm going to make a mutual budget with Kim, man, it is in our best interest that I understand what you think, why you think it, what you've experienced, what money means to you. I need to understand like your theology and basic beliefs about money. So make it fun. Once again, you're not trying to persuade anyone. You're just trying to understand your spouse, enjoy a good dinner together. And I have a hunch that's going to like be the explosion of a conversation that's going to lead to this place we're trying to get to once again, which is a mutually agreed upon expectation.
We're talking with Pastor Mike Novotny. We'd love to send you the direct link on the text line for Newlywed, a Christian guide for loving year one. You can also find Mike and tons of resources at timeofgrace.org. You're listening to The Reconnect. We're going to continue this conversation in just a moment. Just take the first step. Just take the first step. I mean, every journey begins with a first step, right? And if you want to hike to the top of a mountain or if you just want to, make it around the block, it all starts with a first step. Just take one step, a step out the door. Now, the same holds true in the journey of discipleship with Jesus. A relationship with Jesus actually begins with a first step. Sometimes taking that first step can be really hard, right? Well, if you've got questions about what it means to begin a relationship with Jesus, just take the first step. Text the word faith to 41224. Our friends at the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association are going to hold your hand as you take the first step or the next step in your walk of faith with Jesus. They're going to help you walk with him and talk with him. Take the first step of faith today. Text the word faith to 41224. If you're married, how much time did you spend genuinely in premarital counseling? How much time did you spend prior to walking down the aisle for all that would come after that? And what Mike Novotny is trying to bring to the fore is that couples today spend a lot of time planning for the wedding, not a lot of time necessarily preparing for the marriage. And so that's what we're talking about. The book is Newlywed, a Christian guide for loving year one, because the truth is, no matter how old you are when you get married, it's completely different than anything you might have expected it would be. And no two marriages are the same because no two marriages are populated by the same two people. And so expectations matter. And that is really the theme of Newlywed, trying to get those expectations out there. Your expectations, my expectations, and then our expectations together. Mike, what's another subject matter area you want to explore with us today?
Yeah, I know it's a sensitive one. For me and Kim, the topic of intimacy was just the number one thing that we struggled with in marriage. We were both raised in Christian homes. Hope this isn't too much information. We were both virgins until our wedding night. But 7 years into marriage, we're sitting actually in a sex therapist's office trying to figure out why we're having the same fight about intimacy that we've been having every 3 months for like the last 7 years. And now, like I look back and there were just some really basic things that I just didn't, I thought I knew, but I didn't know. I really didn't understand the difference between what some therapists will call spontaneous desire versus responsive desire. That often one person in a marriage, stereotypically the husband, but not always, is ready for intimacy really quickly. And that if you have responsive desire, it's not that you don't enjoy sex, it's just that your body responds to it after it started. So I think I kind of came into marriage thinking, and unfortunately I had a long addiction to pornography before I got married. So I think the bad thing that pornography did to me is that it convinced me that sex should be easy. That, yeah, if you love each other and you're attracted to each other, it's just going to happen. I think that's porn doesn't have a plot. You just jump right into the passion. When it seems so obvious to say now, but I just thought, Kim's cooking dinner, and if I wrap my arms around her and give her a kiss on the neck, she's going to be excited like I'm excited. And it turns out, no, I was just a dude who was interrupting dinner. And that I had to think about how she was wired, what she would respond to. Often in the early days, like I would ask her things like, "Are you okay? Like, what's wrong?" Just because her body was just wired in such a different way than mine was. And so I just think I wish I would have known then what I know now. It would have saved us so many arguments. It would have saved us a bunch of money in therapy. And I try to pour all that experience back into the book to help the next couple in line to avoid those arguments and enjoy greater unity.
I think the expectations conversation is really critical in this subject as well. Like, what are your expectations? To talk prior to getting married about expectations related to intimacy and particularly related to sex, I think that's hugely important. And my guess is most couples who are not waiting, right, they are already sexually active prior to getting married. My guess is they have different expectations about what that looks like on the other side of the wedding. And couples like you and Kim or Jim and I who waited until we got married to enjoy that sexual intimacy need to also have the expectations conversation because it's really important. You're operating with a set of assumptions that are often not true if you don't talk about those things in advance. Then I think the conversation about kids is really, really important. Back in the day when I was offering premarital counseling, the kids conversation was hugely important. And I was always surprised how one person had a different set of expectations related to kids. And then the kids conversation leads to a conversation about careers and who's going to stop working, or maybe nobody's going to stop, right? Like all of those things are super important. I was observing yesterday, just listening to an interview of the vice president on his new book, Communion. And the question was raised, obviously, he and his wife are people of different faiths and come from different faith backgrounds. She from a Hindu background, and him from a Christian background. And now he is a committed Catholic. And the question was asked, well, how does that come up? How do you and Usha raise your children? And he said, well, we just don't talk about it. And I thought, I cannot imagine how that works. He's like, well, we've determined to raise our kids Christian so that they're not confused. But obviously they know mom has different beliefs. And I'm thinking to myself, that's confusing. Like, so
Yeah.
the stuff that we talk about, shared faith, shared values, expectations, sex, chores, money, kids, careers, faith, politics, all of it. Like, we got to have those conversations. And if you want help in having those conversations or in being sure that others you love are going to have those conversations before they get married, I really recommend Mike's book, Newlywed, A Christian Guide for Loving Year One. Mike, what else you want to say today before we have to part company?
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about the good things to do, to communicate, to be humble, to listen. Maybe I can leave with a word, not of what we need to do as married people, but what Jesus has done for us as married people. Um, it's crazy to me that I probably sinned against no one on the planet more than the woman I love, more than anyone else on the planet. She, in marriage, you can't hide. I can fake it as a pastor if I'm in a grumpy mood in church for an hour on Sunday, but I can't fake it in front of Kim for the rest of the day. And so to know that Jesus is the God who is right in the middle of our marriage, and that God is the one who brought the two of us together, and he's not just for the institution, but he's for us in particular. And to know that he's a forgiving God and he remembers my sins no more. It's amazing. I'm gonna do more good works towards that woman and sin against her more than anyone else. And yet there's Jesus right in the middle of it with his mercy, with his spirit, with his power. So there's a lot for us to do. Marriage is a high, holy endeavor. It's a serious and beautiful commitment. But just knowing that it's not white knuckle willpower, read a book, do all this stuff, follow the commandments, man, it's so life-giving because the God who created marriage is right there in the middle of your marriage too.
The in-laws conversation is not one that we had today, but I think that the conversation related to that is absolutely worth investing in the book. So thank you for that particular insight that you've offered, because it is helpful to me in conversations with our young adult kids who obviously, I'm an in-law to some of them. And it's a complex, it's complex because there's a lot of people involved in a marriage. It's not just two of you. So I loved the insight that you offered there. So thank you personally for the book, and then thank you certainly for the conversation today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Carmen.
Absolutely. That's Mike Novotny. He is the host of Time of Grace here on the Faith Radio Network. You can find him at timeofgrace.org. He's a pastor. He's also an author. The book we've been talking about today, Newlywed, A Christian Guide for Loving Year One. We'll send you the direct link on the text line, 877-933-2484. Our friend Bob Castro is going to join us next. You know him. He's a retired pastor. He's been thinking a lot about aliens lately. Yes, atheism and aliens. And the things that, the media would like for us to imagine. That's up next. You're on The Reconnect. Have you seen Disclosure Day? I have. It is provoking all kinds of conversations with others in the culture. If you wanted to promote something that was utterly unbelievable, but you wanted people to believe it, how would you go about that? Well, you would put it in a sci-fi movie. That is what you would do. And so our friend Bob Castro is here with us. He's been leading us into and through conversations using movies as epic sermons, because that is how generations now engage with ideas. And so how are movies epic sermons? And then how could our sermons become more like epic movies? Might be a way of thinking about that. Bob, welcome back to the Reconnect.
Great to be back on, Carmen. Thanks for having me.
Why don't I just invite you to do a little Disclosure Day discussion? What would you bring to the fore?
Well, I had the opportunity to see Disclosure Day for the second time on Tuesday. My wife and I went on opening day, and I had already purchased tickets for Tuesday, so I went, and it was very helpful because I was able to not just experience the movie, but then to study the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the underlying themes that is part of Satan's strategy is I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. That's a huge satanic promotion. And I really appreciated, I think it was Monday's metaphor that you used in terms of winning a football game and game plan. What's the strategy? And how do we counteract that with our own strategy? And so what I saw on the second time through Disclosure Day, the word that I summarized it with is counterfeit. It's
Mm.
a very spiritual movie. So I started counting them off in my head. We have counterfeit speaking in tongues. We have counterfeit word of knowledge, gift of knowledge. We have counterfeit inspiration of the Holy Spirit. We have counterfeit prophecy. And we even have a counterfeit demonic possession. So we have all these spiritual things going on that we see in the book of Acts and in the church in Corinth, and we see them portrayed like stranger things in a totally materialistic setting outside of any references to God.
I made a list. So maybe you could, and if you're listening right now and you haven't seen Disclosure Day and you're planning to, there might be some from some spoilers in this conversation. But I can
Yes.
also tell you this: there's nothing in Disclosure Day. I mean, like, literally nothing. If you've been paying attention to sort of the unfolding Steven Spielberg storyline since E.T., Close Encounters, Men in Black, um,
Super
the
8.
other one where they all showed up in New York, War of the Worlds. I mean,
Yes.
there's nothing new. There's literally like nothing new in this movie. And if you paid attention to the literal disclosures of the U.S. government recently, like there's nothing in this movie that's new. No, I mean nothing. So I don't think we're spoiling anything. There's a story in here that's surprisingly religious. When you say that this is a religious movie, I was I was um I was surprised how just right out there in the front, the religious storyline is. I mean,
Yes.
they just come right out and say, you can't tell people about, what we know, what quote unquote we, the government, like what we quote unquote know about alien life because it would ruin people's religious system. Like that. So let's just start there. How did you experience this in terms of the religious? I mean, you've certainly made these observations about the counterfeit, but what's the religious message, or what's the message of the movie that Spielberg is arguing religious people would have a problem with?
He actually had two approaches, which were, I can't imagine they were anything but intentional. Two arguments that have been popular over the last 50 years. The first one that the girlfriend uses is what's called the beautiful lie. And yes, we are doing spoilers.
Mhm.
um, she was a novitiate nun who left the cloister because she decided she didn't want to be a nun anymore. And she actually confesses that she believes in God, but she just doesn't believe that God is divine.
Which
So
doesn't
another
make any
theme,
sense
go
at
ahead,
all.
go, which is just crazy, yeah. And so the other theme going through this, of course, is spiritual confusion. Satan wants people to be spiritually confused. And then she shares what's called the beautiful lie, which has been around for half a century. We don't actually believe that Christianity is true, but Christianity is helpful for society. So we want people to believe in Christianity so that everybody is calm and everybody is trying to live a good life. Even though we know that Christianity isn't true, it's pragmatic. So she actually shares that. And then later, the nun who plays a key role at the end of the movie, the nun shares the waste of space argument that we have from the movie Contact. If there isn't life in other places in the universe, it seems like a terrible waste of space. And in his interview with CBS, Spielberg actually shares this argument, which became semi-famous from the movie Contact. Of course, there's life in other places in the universe. It's too big for it to be just us. So Spielberg has a vehicle for sharing these two skeptical approaches through the actors in the movie.
Okay. The argument that's not made is that what people are experiencing as quote unquote extraterrestrial is actually extra dimensional. And what people are experiencing are interactions with the demonic. That is
Correct.
not offered. Surprisingly to me, the mother superior of the monastery does not bring forward that worldview. I like kind of had the expectation that that's where she would arrive, but it's not. She also
Yeah, it's
and
really brilliant because
yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry. It's really brilliant because he actually uses the nun at the end of the movie, and she's the one that says what everybody is saying on social media. If there are aliens, no, it will not affect my faith because obviously God is the creator of them as well as the creator of anyone else, which is what you hear all the influencers saying since the first interview. But what Spielberg does with that is really brilliant or insidious, depending on your perspective. From her taking that position approvingly at the end of the movie, what she's basically promoting is everything that you're seeing on your screen now is true. So he's actually using the argument to affirm the veracity of the alien information.
Yeah. We got to take a brief break. When we come back, we're going to continue this conversation with Bob Castro. If you have seen Disclosure Day and you've got questions or insights or provocations for this discussion, add those on the text line, 877-933-2484. Love to interact with you and the questions that you have. And let's see. Scrolling around on the text line, just checking out what you're thinking about, what you're sensing. But we're going to return to this conversation in just a moment. We have been talking about Disclosure Day, not only with Bob Castro, but with other guests as well. And so what are the thoughts that have been provoked in your mind if you were to lead a discussion on Disclosure Day at your church? How might you engage this material? That's the kind of thing I'm trying to provoke. So we're going to continue the conversation with Bob here in just a moment. You're listening to The Reconnect. Hey, I really like it that you listen whenever you want, wherever you are, at all times of the day and night. That is so cool. So thank you so very much for all the ways in which you support this ministry with your prayers and words of encouragement. Right now, in order for this podcast to be available everywhere all the time for everyone, I actually need your help. Could you support this podcast right now so that more people in more places at every hour of every day could hear about Jesus and grow in their relationship with him? Click the link in the show notes or give now at myfaithradio.com. And thank you so much again for listening to this podcast. Alien life. Alien life, or the reality of the unseen realm that we know is there because it's testified to throughout the scriptures of the Old and New Testaments. We're not talking about extraterrestrial life. We're really talking about another dimension. We're talking about the spiritual realm. Is that the kind of conversation you could bring to the fore as people are talking about Disclosure Day. It is not an argument that is made in the film, but it is one that, in my view, should be presented by Christians as we engage in this particular conversation. So we're talking with retired pastor Bob Castro. He thinks a lot about movies and the way movies function as epic sermons in the culture today, and he has seen Disclosure Day a couple of times. So, Bob, continuing to dig in here with you on this, how do you see this as an expression of neo-atheism?
When we talked about Stranger Things, we had the opportunity to mention Sean McDowell's view that what Stranger Things does is present deeply spiritual themes and then reduce them to a materialistic worldview. That's exactly what happened here, of course, is I've mentioned these spiritual themes that are running throughout, and yet the worldview is totally materialistic. And so we have to be thinking, as you mentioned on Monday, I think, anticipating what the strategy is. The strategy with Satan is always the same in principle. It's deception. Jesus called Satan the father of lies. And so we can look at what is this deception? If it is deception, and it probably is, then what is it appealing to? And one of the things that I've been hearkening back to in my mind is, and I don't remember all the details, but there was a cult in the West that actually was sitting around waiting, a religious cult, sitting around waiting to be taken off the planet by aliens. And so the connection between aliens and spirituality is a real one.
Heaven's Gate,
Yep.
1997. Look at you. Well, and look at my Googler. I'm just saying. So,
Yeah.
yes, the Heaven's Gate UFO religious cult founded in the 1970s. Interesting. So this has been around for a while in terms of cultural conversations. One of the things that you pointed out to me is how scientists in particular, like, they will become aware of something, and then in order to make up a reason for what they've quote unquote discovered, or what study has led them to, instead of acknowledging that God is God and there is a creator, and that God made the universe and everything in it and this earth upon which we live, and they will instead come up with some crazy idea like life on planet Earth was seeded by aliens.
Yes. That's one of my favorites. I can be kind of snarky. Sarcasm is like a second language to me. And what would you do if you were an atheist microbiologist and you just discovered that the DNA molecule cannot form by random chance? It just can't. You've discovered a breakthrough that the DNA molecule, the foundation of all life, was designed. And you're an atheist. So what are you going to do? Well, if you were following the science, and if you were using reason in a rational world, you would obviously start looking for the designer, but not our plucky atheists. Our plucky atheists instead say, well, we know what happened. Aliens came from another planet and seeded the earth with DNA, and that is what caused life to form on the planet Earth. Now, some arguments are just silly. And when I taught confirmation students, I had 13-year-olds that could look me in the eye and say, doesn't that just move the problem to another planet? So it's just a silly argument, but they have to preserve atheism, not because it's rational or scientific, but because they just can't live in a world where God exists. So what they did was they started promoting movies that would share the idea of what's called panspermia, alien DNA seeding, to get people to believe it without actually engaging their left brain and thinking about it. The three particular ones that I have in mind are Mission to Mars with Gary Sinise, Prometheus, which is the prequel to the original 70s Alien movie, and then on the more fun, lighthearted side is Jupiter Ascending. All three movies promote DNA seeding to get people to believe it without actually thinking.
Because, yeah, again, it just moves the issue to another planet in terms of where life came from or where it began.
And Richard Dawkins, one of the most famous atheists on the planet, in an interview with Ben Stein that was recorded in the documentary Expelled, actually publicly promotes this in the interview. And so he claims to be a smart person, and it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. We love these conversations. Thank you for tilling the soil with us. We're going to have to return to this. We do have a question that maybe you and I should pick up at a later time because it's going to require a length of discussion. And that is, could Bob Castro at some point talk about the alien origins of so many superheroes? You know, Superman comes to mind, but I'm sure there are tons of others, and I'm sure you know them. But we can't do it right now. But will you make a note that the people want to talk about that?
That'll be fun. Yeah. And
That'll
I'm
be
just
so
going
fun.
to throw out the name Thor really quickly.
Yeah, Thor for sure. Well, and then of course there's going to be those people who are like, well, isn't that how Jesus arrived? I'm just saying, like, the origin stories of yeah, we only have one story, people, and it's Jesus. It's just Jesus. You can't, just go with the Jesus story. All right, Bob, we got to let it go right there. You're the best. Thank you so much.
Great to be on. Thank you, Carmen.
So much fun. All right, I love that you're thinking. I love that you're asking good questions. I love having conversations with you every single day and spurring conversations into the future. Tomorrow is Juneteenth. I hope you'll give that some thought. I hope you won't just take it as a part of a 3-day weekend, but really consider freedom and how long it takes the good news to get to some people that they've been set free. And so if you've not yet heard that that God is offering you freedom in Christ, maybe that news is just arriving to you for the very first time today. You've been set free, and I want you to be free indeed. So maybe that would be a good way to focus your theological energy tomorrow on Juneteenth. This weekend is also Father's Day, and so I encourage you to be thinking in advance about that as well. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with me today here on the Reconnect. Love spending time with you. I know that time is your one non-renewable, most valuable resource, and so it's precious that you would choose to spend part of your day with me. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Have a great day, and God bless. Thanks for listening to The Reconnect with Carmen LaBerge. Let us know how we can help you more fully reconnect the eternal with the everyday. We want to walk with you throughout your journey of discipleship, so let's connect. You can text us at 877-933-2484 or connect with us online at myfaithradio.com and on all our social media. I look forward to connecting with you as we each seek to reconnect the eternal with the everyday.